very warm welcome to today's session, Workforce Nutrition in ESG Reporting Frameworks. I'm thrilled that you're all able to join us live here today on the 21st of November, or if you're listening to this recording in the future, we hope that you'll find it an informative session. So I'm Sharon Bly, I lead Health and Sustainability here at the Consumer Goods Forum. And I'm thrilled to be surrounded by such a great team of experts who are going to lead us through practically why this is so important, and of course why all of us in the Workforce Nutrition Alliance, the Consumer Goods Forum, and again the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition are advocating, obviously, for companies who are investing in their own people and the people who work along their supply chain. So lots of great learnings today, and don't hesitate to use the Q&A function that you'll see normally at the bottom of your screen. Just think of using the best of all of the great minds that are with us today, and don't hesitate to ask them any questions during the session or after the session. You can obviously reach out to us. We leave our contact details in the chat. So as you can see, I'm joined by Valentina, Anna, and Tarun, who will bring you through all different angles of workforce nutrition and ESG reporting frameworks. And what I suggest is that we dive right in, and I'll hand you over directly to Valentina, who will set up the session. And as I said, we'll have lots of time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. So don't hesitate to get thinking about your questions as we go through the session. So thank you for joining, and Valentina, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Sharon, and thank you again for having me today. I'm very excited about these new emerging topics. I'm going to share my screen. Let me know if everything works or if I break anything as per tradition. There you go. Can you hear me and see the screen very well?
All perfect, good, Valentina.
So thank you again for having me today. My name is Valentina Bayamonte. I'm an ESG and sustainability specialist, and I work as an independent consultant, advising companies during the sustainability reporting season, which is right now. So there's a lot of work to do on ESG disclosure frameworks and how to practically integrate workforce nutrition programs. These are two topics that may not seem to be linked, at least apparently, but today I'm going to guide you throughout 3 steps that I noticed worked quite well when advising companies on how to implement ESG disclosure frameworks. As I mentioned before, so these are the 3 steps. So we're going to go through the ESG materiality assessment, which is the first part of the disclosure requirements across different regions. And then we're going to dive into risk assessment and management, specifically the risks associated with poor working conditions and how workforce nutrition can really help minimizing risk associated to poor working conditions. And then we're going to end looking at the governance and how to implement good governance and set strategies that are in line with nutrition. Just a little disclosure here, disclaimer, I'm going to be using Menti, which is a fairly easy way to engage with the audience. So make sure that you keep your phone next to you. There will be a very easy QR code to scan so you can answer some of the questions throughout the presentation. So before talking about disclosure frameworks, I want to really make you understand how unhealthy diets are at the nexus of environmental, social, and governance issues. So it's everyone's responsibility to address these issues at the core. So healthy diets are important because there's a recent FAO report. It's an excellent report, so I really advise you to read it. The report estimated the hidden cost associated with unhealthy diets. And the total hidden cost amount at 12.7 trillion US dollars. So I'm sure no one here can picture how big this number is. It's quite huge. And the report highlights also how these impacts of unhealthy diets are not only on people and employees, but also across environmental issues, social and health issues. And that's what you see on the histogram on the right of the slide. And then at the further end of the slide, you can see the different breakouts between environmental hidden cost, health hidden cost, and social hidden cost. At the social level, you can see, for example, undernourishment or poverty, but there's also, for example, a gender dynamic to unhealthy diets, with women or vulnerable communities being more exposed to hidden social costs. When we look at the impact of unhealthy cost between different levels of income, between different countries, we can see how the costs are quite different. So hidden costs, different in their composition. If you look at low-income countries at the top of the histogram on the right, you can see how in these countries, environmental and social hidden costs are more important, while when we go towards high-income countries, the hidden costs are more at the health level. For example, obesity or non-communicable diseases related to heart disease or stroke. So, for example, if you look at unhealthy diets, it's not only about what we eat, it's also about creating spillovers, positive spillovers across all the E, the environmental issues, but also the S, the social issues. And Anna will take you through how to implement healthy diets at the workplace, so I'm not going to talk too much about that. So let's move to ESG disclosure. These are the 3 steps that I mentioned before, and these are usually the 3 steps that appear to be across different disclosure requirements from the US, the EU, and Asia. So I would say that these are 3 nice best practices a company can follow to make sure that the disclosure is consistent and coherent with the messaging the companies want to give. But before we start and we talk about ESG disclosure and all these new requirements, I want to understand a little bit, what's your take on ESG? What do you think the purpose of ESG disclosure is? So if you can take your phone and scan the QR code, the QR code will take you to a website and you can type an answer, and we're going to discuss briefly the results. If the QR code doesn't work, it should, but if it doesn't, you can also access menti.com and use the code at the top of the slides. And we should see the results any minute. Thanks. I see one response already, compliance. Yeah. So companies in the EU especially are required to fulfill disclosure requirements. So there's also a compliance exercise to it. Yeah. A lot of people agree with compliance. Transparency, for sure. Companies now are under more and more scrutiny towards the stakeholders, governments, and policymakers. So it's a good way to become more transparent and also accountable. Transparent accountability, these are the 2 topics that usually go together. Guide companies, societies, and their impact. Yes, it's a good way to understand the impact that companies have on environmental and social issues. Enhance company practices. Yeah, all amazing insights. Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's not only about compliance, it's about the messaging that the company wants to give to the stakeholders and the kind of decisions that the companies have to take to embed ESG and also sustainability considerations within their core activities. So thank you all for these great insights. So I'm going to talk about the ESG material assessment, which is the first step in ESG disclosure and how to integrate workforce nutrition within the material assessment. So there's different definitions of materiality, single or double material assessment. The double assessment means that companies have to report on the impact that companies have on ESG material topics, for example, healthy workplace or water management. So this is the inside-outside view. But at the same time, companies are required to disclose the other way around. So the impact that ESG material topics have on the company itself or the functioning of the business model. That's the outside-inside view. And you can see on the right how different disclosure requirements, different disclosure frameworks adopt one approach, the single material assessment or the double. In my understanding of these requirements, disclosure frameworks are moving toward the double material assessment. So you can see how the EU CSRD, but also TCFD, so the disclosure frameworks to disclose climate-related risks, or the TNFD, they both have this double perspective that is usually implemented in the assessment. Now, how to integrate workforce nutrition within the double materiality assessment. A good rule of thumb, these are 3 steps that I usually work with the clients and the companies I work with. And companies tend to understand these steps quite well because they already have some practices in place. The step 1 would be to understand who your stakeholders are and engage with them. So the first step would be to analyze the business context. For example, if you have different operations across these different geographical regions, you can engage with stakeholders from the US, the EU, or Asia, and you have to make sure that you include both internal and external stakeholders. For example, not only employees, but also integrated suppliers or suppliers from different regions. There's 2 criteria that are quite good to select stakeholders. Companies have thousands of stakeholders usually, so it's a good way to understand how to select them, to engage with them in a proactive way. Diversity and intersectionality. These are 2 lenses that are quite useful because diversity allows you to capture different perspectives from different groups of stakeholders: civil society, employees, local communities, women, and so on and so forth. While the intersectionality lens gives you diversity within each community. So within the employees community, you have to make sure that you interview employees in the headquarters or in different geographical regions, different seniority levels, gender, because every group within each category can give you different understanding of the impact of the company on ESG material issues. Now, the step 2 would be to identify and prioritize ESG material issues. So to understand what is material for the company, so what the company needs for its functioning, and how to prioritize what it's material for the company itself. So usually that's what companies do when they engage actively with stakeholders. It's a good practice to interview your stakeholders, your employees, your suppliers, because it has to be a participatory engagement. By talking to them, it's the only way you can really understand the impacts on the ground. And so, for example, if you interview your employees or your suppliers, you will see that there's a lot of material topics that relate to these groups of stakeholders. For example, well-being at workplace, or food security, or talent retention, innovation, healthy diets. So you can really see and capture all these ESG issues that should be reported, include inside the material assessment. And the last step would be to review and disclose your assessment. Companies tend to have internal committees, sustainability committees, or subject matter expert groups to review the ESG issues and disclose the output in a understanding way. This is one of the examples of materiality assessment taken from Kraft Heinz, and Anna will explain this much better than me for sure. But you can see how the different material issues, the dots you see on the plot, are ranked according to the importance to Kraft Heinz, the business, so the functioning of the business model on the x-axis, and the stakeholders on the y-axis. And you can see how, again, if the company engages proactively with employees, suppliers, for example, all these employers' well-being related material topics appear at the top right quadrant of the matrix. And I highlighted here some of these material issues that already have some clear connections with workforce nutrition. For example, employee health and safety, employee diversity, inclusion, and workforce management. Now, the assessment alone is not self-explanatory. It has to go somewhere. We have to remember that disclosure is a collaborative topic, so everyone within the company has his or her own job. So after the material assessment has been conducted, it's usually a best practice to integrate the output within the risk assessment and risk management practices. So we're now at the step number 2 in disclosure. And there's a lot of frameworks on how to integrate the output of the material assessment into the risk assessment and management. The COSO ERM guidance is one of the most established frameworks to do that because it starts from the establishment of the context, which is exactly your material assessment. So from the list of material issues, you can identify, analyze, and evaluate and manage the risks associated with poor working conditions. So that's the link that companies have to make. Companies have different methodologies and scoring tools to identify and prioritize the risks. But it's usually a best practice to have a very holistic approach and understand not only the risks, but also the impacts, risks, and opportunities, IROs. That's another fancy acronym that appears in disclosure. And this process is also part of several disclosure frameworks, and that gives also the double perspective of the double material assessment. You identify the impacts, but also the risks and opportunities associated with some ESG material issues. And obviously, these risks have to be communicated externally to the stakeholders, because you have to really showcase to the stakeholders that you have listened to their voices and put everything into practice. So we've done some of the work for you. You can see in this list some of the risks associated with poor working conditions and some of the risks that can be mitigated or eliminated through workforce nutrition programs. The actual list was too long, so I had to cut it in half, but you can see the full list of risks in the report that we published on GAIN's website. And we're going to share the slides and the report after the webinar. So you can see already there's a lot of implications on not managing properly good working conditions. For example, high management costs, because people tend to get sick more often, or poor performance, higher turnover. So including workforce nutrition programs within benefit packages could be a good way to minimize any of these risks. So next, I'm going to really stress the importance here that disclosure is everyone's job. So it's not only checking the boxes and doing your homework and understanding the impacts. It's also about understanding how to integrate everything within governance practices and the strategy of the company. There has to be some sort of consistency and coherency within what the companies disclose and how the companies behave internally, but also externally. So we're now at the last step of the disclosure framework wheel, the governance and strategy planning. So good governance can really integrate nutrition and workforce nutrition within different tools. The corporate values, valuing, for example, nutrition and healthy diets, or the working culture. Companies can also set nutrition strategy or commitments and targets. There's some good examples, for example, of marketing policies that use, for example, some marketing policies that ban marketing of sugary products or snacks around schools. These could be also good ways to improve healthy diets in kids. And there's also like internal corporate policies, which are very easy ways for companies to integrate workforce nutrition and also the values that the companies pursue. These are some examples that are taken from sustainability reports. There's many more of these examples that you can see in the report, but just to highlight some of them, some companies have, for example, vouchers to support employees purchasing more nutritious meals. There could be also breastfeeding support programs to help new moms to combine work and also breastfeeding. There's also nutrition-related health checks that some companies have implemented to make sure that the workforce is healthy and able to work. You can access the report by scanning the QR code, and you can have further information on GAIN's projects on the website. And that's all from me. So thank you. If you want to reach out to me, this is my email address and my LinkedIn contact. Thank you. And I'll give the floor to Anna. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Valentina. And let me share the screen. Hopefully everybody's able to see and to hear well. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Happy to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. And before I get into the topic, I'm Anna Piekars. I'm the Global Head of ESG Nutrition at Kraft Heinz. And I will walk you through our approach at Kraft Heinz to employees' wellness and the ESG reporting framework. So before getting into the topic, let me share some information about Kraft Heinz. So we are one of the largest food and beverage company in the world. It's a food and beverage company. Nutrition, food, wellness is fully embedded in our day-to-day work and business strategy. We operate in more than 40 countries around the world. We have a very diverse portfolio, more than 200 brands, not only in retail channels, but also in food service channels. At Kraft Heinz, we have approximately 37,000 employees around the world. Our purpose is let's make life delicious, and our vision is to sustainably grow by delighting consumers globally. Our values, we have 6 values. We are consumer obsessed, we dare to do better every day, we champion great people, we demand diversity, we do the right thing, and we own it. So this gives you an overview of who we are and more information about Kraft Heinz. But let's get into the topic of today, that is ESG, environmental, social, and governance commitments and the reporting framework, and how we approach and what is our strategy at Kraft Heinz. So already Valentina shared with you that at Kraft Heinz, we inform our ESG strategy and goal setting based on a materiality assessment. We conduct a very comprehensive materiality assessment on an annual basis. You can visit the website where you will find the 2023 ESG report together at the table. We published that last year, and this is the latest materiality matrix. We can, thanks to this assessment, we are able to identify and prioritize the ESG issues that are of greatest concern and prioritize to our stakeholders and relevance to the success of our business. This is a evidence-based, data-driven approach. And the materiality metrics that we see on the screen shows that the S in ESG is essential, is a big part in our ESG mix. Materiality topics, and I highlighted them here with a red arrow, such as health and nutrition, employee health and safety, workforce management, they are ranked very high in the priorities for our Kraft Heinz financial perspective, as well as our stakeholders' performance. Regarding stakeholders, we engage with a very broad range of stakeholders on different topics, including, of course, nutrition-related matters. And these stakeholders are employees, customers, consumers, NGOs, the stockholders, investors, industry associations, policymakers, suppliers, as well as philanthropic partners. So, but let's zoom in the S in ESG. The S in ESG encompasses several things, but let's focus on employee wellness at Kraft Heinz and how we address this materiality issue. So we are committed to supporting and inspiring a lifestyle of well-being for our employees to make these healthy life choices, not only in the workplace, but also outside the workplace with their families, communities, and that translates in the society as a whole. We have a holistic approach to well-being. The Live Well framework at Kraft Heinz focuses on 4 well-being elements: physical, emotional, social, and financial. And nutrition is an enabler of these 4 elements. It's fully embedded in each and all of them. We need a well-nourished workforce, a healthy workforce, which again, it translates within the community and the society as a whole. We provide specific programs in each of these elements of the framework, and we partner with organizations to support the employees within each of these particular areas. We have the global core benefits that are the foundation in these four elements. I'm going to provide some examples, but I highlighted here in the social pillar, the parental leave, the nutrition, the breastfeeding support. Also, we have the physical in terms of healthcare screening, assessment, fitness, and all the assistance for the overall ecosystem around the employees. It's not only about the employee when it's at the workplace, and everything around the well-being. Getting into more specifics on how nutrition is embedded into this Live Well framework, I have here specific examples on the nutrition programs. One of them is the Nutrition to Nourish curriculum, end-to-end. It's part of our university platform. It's a series of courses, training, ranging from nutrition 101 to healthy dietary pattern, how to manage chronic diseases through healthy lifestyle, addressing also nutrients of public health concerns such as sodium, sugar, saturated fats. So this curriculum is available to all the employees of Kraft Heinz through this platform that is available, again, globally on university. In addition to that, we have a global Live Well Hub, where we have the nutrition nuggets, Eat Well, Be Well, Live Well, where we share tips and recommendations on healthy lifestyle, healthy eating. For instance, in our internal channels, we amplify the Nutrition Month with tips from the nutrition team at Kraft Heinz on sustainable nutrition. For instance, tips on how to grow your own food by gardening. So this is a way to share our life experience with our colleagues and amplify the message of the importance of nutrition and well-being. Also, how important it is the support to parents, caregivers. We have policies on parental leave, maternity leave, support program for breastfeeding moms, breastfeeding rooms, which are very important when the mom is at the workplace to promote breastfeeding for a healthy start in life. And further than that, there are programs in different locations around the world. For example, we have an app for some of the locations that is the What's Cooking, encouraging employees to practice or to implement and to do healthy recipes, share tips, culinary experience channel. We offer fresh fruit at the workplace and also healthy food options. And we also have a foodcast that all of this helps employees not only to learn new things, to implement, but also as a food and beverage company, that ownership. We sell food, we sell food and beverages, so it's important that we are healthy. Let's get into some of the tools that are available, and I want to share an example on how the Workforce Nutrition Alliance scorecard help us to start the journey in this process to improve the nutrition programs to increase our footprint in all the locations. So we started with a piloting the scorecard in one of our sites. And I want to say thank you for the great support. It helped us to identify our practices, what we are doing well, what are some of the gaps that we have, what are the challenges, and how we can improve the food environment, and how we can work in our overall global complex organization ecosystem. So thanks to this scorecard, when we started the journey and we implementing the scorecard in one of the sites, these are some of the great examples that we were able to identify. We knew we were doing that, but having clear metrics, clear KPIs it was a very valuable. So at the site, we offer healthy meals with vegetables, vegetarian options, variety of protein alternatives. We encourage drinking water in the workplace, a relaxed social space, because as I mentioned before, it's a holistic approach, I mean, about nutrition, but also the mental well-being. We do not promote, and in fact, in some of our locations, the eating snack or eating in front of the computer. So there are no, in this site where we initiated the journey, no vending machines, breastfeeding rooms, and we offer exercise options. So I want to encourage to all of you that are in the webinar today that are starting the journey, please go ahead and use the scorecard, because it's an excellent way to start and to continue improving the practices and measure the progress on how we are doing as an organization on these topics. So just to finalize, I just want to say that this is a journey. It's not easy, in particular with complex global organizations, and having the support of the Workforce Nutrition Alliance as well as other partners is critical. It's critical to develop a clear roadmap to improve benchmark, to report progress, and to assess impact. So the self-assessment scorecards, although it's an internal assessment, is aligned with the external frameworks of reporting by organizations, for example, the World Benchmarking Alliance, the Access to Nutrition Initiative. So it's a very valuable tool to use globally. And again, conduct this assessment on a regular basis. Another learning during our journey is the importance of identify global and local opportunities. Of course, there are cultural differences. The well-being of employees is multifactorial. There are several things interacting, so how we tackle that, so being able to identify that, engaging with the internal stakeholders and identify some of the champions that can drive the programs and the well-being in different locations. And here is the importance of the support of the teams to implement context-specific nutrition programs. As I said, global organizations is very different if you have sites in Latin America, if you have them in Asia, different part of the world, different realities, and also promote the best practice. When you are able to identify where are the best practice, roll them out, promote them, and monitor the progress. So with this, I want to close up and say thank you to everybody, and again to WNA for the valuable support throughout this journey, and looking forward to continue working together. We have, I guess, all of us, ESG is a topic that continues evolving. We are learning more how to report, how to improve our practices, and we are together on this. So thank you, and I pass the, I guess, the screen and the floor to Tarun.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anna, Valentina. Very, very insightful, informative presentations from the both of you. Delighted to join this insightful dialogue today. And I think my couple of takeaways were, very revealing environmental and social spillover of all the hidden costs related to unhealthy dietary patterns in Valentina's presentation. And the need for diversity and intersectionality in the stakeholders that one engages with during the process of materiality assessments. And then the identification, prioritizing of risks in a simple, compelling way, and integrating nutrition into governance. And so interesting, Anna, to see your observation that the materiality really highlights the wellness of the workforce, employee health and safety as key areas within the materiality side. And you also mentioned that it can be very, very context specific and can vary with the context that companies are working in and the environments companies are working in. Just to give additional context, emerging markets, emerging LMIC economies across the globe are also experiencing very high rates of growth, and their ESG reporting is also becoming more and more relevant and more important. And so, therefore, important to see how this play out of ESG reporting can be initiated in those markets which do not have the experience of mature markets as yet. So one of the efforts I just wanted to apprise the group here is by ATNI and GAIN on a project, very interesting project called Nourishing ESG in Emerging Markets. And one of the markets we're looking at initially is India, given that the Securities and Exchange Board of India has mandated the top 1,000 listed companies in the country to start mandatory reporting on ESG. The organizations felt it was a good idea to be early starters and set the inclusion of nutrition within ESG reporting as one of the areas that we could work with local stakeholders in the country. And therefore, just the knowledge and information on materiality assessment and the experience of companies that are working in so many different contexts is extremely useful for the efforts that ATNI and GAIN will make. So thank you very much, for your presentation. I just wanted to kick off a few questions, that popped up in my mind as the presentations were being done. And the first one, to Anna, what were the expected benefits perceived by Kraft Heinz through the inclusion of workforce nutrition in ESG reporting when you first started this journey at Kraft Heinz? Any specific challenges and risks and gaps that you thought of or you encountered when you started? And what is your advice for companies in developed markets and also importantly in emerging markets as they kick off their journeys? Over to you, Anna.
Yeah, thank you. It's complex. I think it will summarize my answer. Our expected benefits, of course, drive change. That's what all of us want here. Attract and retain happy and healthy employees, talent, improve the well-being and the performance. But what are the challenges here? There are several challenges. First of all, is to set baseline, how to measure, to start measuring the process. Another challenge is, as a Kraft Heinz, we are a complex organization. So having and defining clear measurable metrics is very important. How to track them. And also the performance and the well-being of employees is multifactorial. It's not only one thing. So how to take that approach in workforce nutrition and well-being in general is challenging in a big organization, because how we measure our factors that also are having an impact on employee well-being and business performance. For instance, let's think about microeconomic factors, geopolitical situation, cultural differences. So it's not ESG in general. If we think about, it's all interconnected. So it brings a lot of this complexity. Going back to the scorecard, I think is an excellent tool because that is helping us to set this baseline and have clear KPIs and see how we can progress. Of course, in order to use the scorecard in all the sites, it takes time. It's not something that you do that in one day. And so it's a journey. It takes time, but this is an excellent tool to go through this process and continue moving forward.
Thanks so much, Anna. Thank you so much. There are some questions in the chat box as well. We'll come to those. Let me just move to sort of kicking off a question for Valentina. Valentina, how simple or complicated can inclusion of workforce nutrition within ESG reporting be? What, from a company, investor, regulator standpoint, what could be the key concerns in this regard? Your thoughts most welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Tarun. Yeah, great question. There's no right or wrong question here. It depends on the company, on the level of maturity of the company. I would reinforce what Anna just mentioned, the challenge related to measurements and KPIs. Some of the data on performance or sick leaves, they tend to be confidential, so they might, not be suitable for disclosure. But I would say there's also a lack of understanding of the values and the positive impacts of workforce nutrition, not only within the company, but also outside of the company itself. So I would say that partnerships with NGOs could be of great support to overcome this challenge. There's also a tendency that I see most of the times in companies, which is called the first mover disadvantage. Companies might be reluctant to be the first one to disclose on the impacts of workforce nutrition because maybe their peers haven't done so. So I would say that, again, having shared moments like this one with companies, pushing for good governance, good practices related to workforce nutrition can be a really nice starting point to create a community of peers, companies that understand and can share metrics and challenges. So yeah, I would say that we need to still go beyond the business as usual mindset. But I think we're at a good start here with this webinar and different partnerships that NGOs can provide.
Thanks, Valentina. Just a question, Anna, is voluntary reporting on ESG, including nutrition, is that sufficient, or you do need more rigorous compliance-related frameworks to, actually catalyze more momentum behind this kind of reporting? What is your opinion?
Yeah, it's not an easy answer. I think first we need to ensure that we have harmonized, clear metrics, measurable metrics that can be applied in different organizations, and data can be tracked. So I think regardless if it's voluntary or mandatory, the importance here is to have clear metrics among organizations. So I think we are making progress as it is voluntary. I think we are now as a company very transparent through our reporting. How governments evolve, it depends on the region, but my views is that until we have very clear harmonized metrics, it's very difficult to make it mandatory because everybody needs to comply, but we need to ensure there is clear metrics.
Thanks. I know I'm taking a lot of time, and I'd love to move to the sort of questions in the chat room as well. But one last question, just requesting both of you to chip in as you feel sort of, when we address workforce nutrition, where does the responsibility of companies extend to within their supply chains? It's important because lots of the large national and global companies have very extended supply chains. So what are the limits of the responsibility that make including workforce nutrition more tangible, more concrete and achievable, and what is kind of like a good to do, but not really the responsibility? Your comments will be most welcome.
Well, I can start, Valentina, with my answer because it's a difficult question. And it could help to perform well. If suppliers perform well, companies will perform well. However, right now we still are building the evidence. Do we really have this evidence to really see that direct relationship? But I think the bigger question here is how to make it work. And how far to put public health responsibilities on the private sector. So I don't think there is a straight answer. Again, it's a difficult answer and we need to work together. But that's, Valentina, very interested on your views on this.
Yeah, thank you. And I agree, it's a difficult question. And again, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here because we are all trying to do the same things at the end. I don't think it's impossible to integrate workforce nutrition within supply chains or integrated suppliers. They're two different things. I think it's about redefining the purpose of the company and move from the maximization of profits for the investors to the maximization of the value for the stakeholders. So it's a shift in the mindset. I think that's the step one, and that's already a huge work to do. But I think the companies have different tools that they can already use to ensure good working conditions within their supply chains. Some companies use integrated suppliers. So instead of leaving the supply chain independent, they acquire the entity. So the suppliers become de facto employees. And that's an easy way to implement working conditions and programs like workforce nutrition programs, minimum wages, because the company has direct control on these entities and they can monitor even well. When it's about suppliers, I would say there are more indirect ways to influence working conditions. There's, for example, suppliers' code of conducts that can mention ethics concerns or sustainable sourcing practices. Mentioning nutrition as well, it could be one of the many packages within the supplier's code of conduct, and also minimum wages. I think there's a whole package there that can be applied to suppliers. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So I just wanted us to move to some of the questions in the chat room, and yes, one question is related to the connection with the Sun Movement Business Network, and yeah, what are the connections with the Sun Movement Business Network of ESG reporting and workforce nutrition? Is there any impetus in this? Any response? There's another question on the workforce nutrition scorecard, and I saw Anna had responded earlier that the workforce nutrition scorecard had been quite useful for Kraft Heinz when they were sort of institutionalizing the workforce nutrition reporting mechanism. Miriam, you want to distill some of the questions in the chat room, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I can briefly speak to the Sun Movement Business Network question. I think as the Workforce Nutrition Alliance, we're always trying to seek allies on how to advocate for these type of issues. Of course, working with businesses, but also working with other institutions that ultimately have the same goal of fighting against malnutrition. So the Sun movement definitely is something that we're related to. So especially indeed the Sun Business Network is an organization that we're always trying to link with in different country contexts. And that especially happens in the places where we are setting up national workforce nutrition alliances to advocate for the topic in that specific context, which can then also influence policies, for example, in the countries where we're working. So with that, I'll give it back to you, Tarun. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Miriam. So very interesting question, on where is the well-being of the workforce homeroomed? Uh, is it which department takes ownership and which department is ultimately responsible? I mean, implicit in this question is probably what is the role of the top leadership and the senior management and HR, or is it integral to every business department? Anna, over to you, and Valentina, very happy to listen to your comments as well.
It's everybody in the organization. It has to be embedded in the work that we do every day, and everybody has to own it. So basically, in terms of the governance, has to be from the top down and from the bottom up. So I think in organizations, there is not only one function responsible for this. Of course, I mean, in terms of how you implement, there are different pieces in the workforce nutrition program. So you will have functions that will have more relevant responsibility in the implementation and the execution, but everybody in the organization has to own it and be responsible for that.
Yeah, I agree. I want to echo the same messaging. Sometimes there's companies with different maturity levels, as I mentioned before. But the fact that a company has only one material assessment conducted and then it stops there doesn't bring any positive change across the whole value chain. It's everyone's job to understand where the value chain, what the boundaries are, and understand which role has specific responsibilities and who is accountable for it. There's different governance structures, so there's no one way to manage sustainability. But I guess the word embedding throughout decision making is really the right answer. So everyone has to be aware of where disclosure is going. Otherwise, it just disclosure for the sake of disclosing with no final purpose.
So, just a question, for both of you. What would the role of policymakers would be? And where I'm coming from this is in the developed markets and the European and the American markets, I'm assuming the journey on ESG reporting and inclusion of nutrition and employee well-being is fairly mature, and emerging markets are still initiating this process. What potential role could policymakers uh, play to catalyze, this kind of compliance by companies? Any thoughts?
I can go ahead. Thank you, Tarun. Um, Again, I think there has to be some more coordination between the public and the private sectors. So policymakers can definitely steer the debate around nutrition and workforce nutrition. For example, removing the stigma around obesity and understanding a little bit more the interconnection between the different environmental and social issues related to nutrition. Policymakers can still and decide the agenda, the political agenda, steer the public attention by putting more emphasis on nutrition. But I guess that a practical way for policymakers to really make an impact on the ground would be to, for example, shift or redefine the scope of public funds. There's a lot of public funds in the EU or at the national level to support nutrition related programs. So I would say that extending the scope of these funds to include also workforce nutrition could be a nice way for policymakers to make a true impact on the ground. And for companies, I would say that the best way would be to include policymakers within the material assessment, because by listening to their voices, they can really understand the social implications of unhealthy diets among not only the workforce, but also the society itself. So I would say, yeah, public-private partnerships could be a nice way to deal with that, also in emerging markets. And I think there's also a great publication from GAIN that reviewed different, I think it's 12 countries that were reviewed to understand whether there's some policies that relate to nutrition. And I think we can share the publication after, but it's a recent report published in November. And basically, review highlighted how there's policies on all the 4 pillars related to workforce nutrition, for example, breastfeeding support, nutrition-focused health checks or education training, or in general nutrition frameworks like healthy diets, some tips. So yeah, there's a lot of work going on at the policy level as well.
Thank you so much. I see we just have another 4 minutes. So perhaps I'll just try and summarize. Very interesting, very informative, intuitive, presentations, very engaging question and answers, and giving us a holistic view of the journey of ESG reporting, how the environment and social governance are all connected, and the spillover of health and environment and social aspects as a consequence of sort of unhealthy diets. The very interesting study on the materiality assessment at Kraft Heinz, and I saw a couple of these cases of Carrefour and Black & Decker in the presentation as well. Interesting to see that a diverse set of stakeholders does identify employee well-being, employee health, nutrition as very material, very key, and very much in the right-hand quadrant of the materiality matrices that one saw in these 3 companies. A key insight that I heard was that either by industry or by size of company or by context or by country, developing versus emerging, the context will define how the whole materiality assessment gets done, how the risks get identified and prioritized, and what gets subsumed into the whole governance matrix of the entire effort that sort of companies do. No clear answer on whether voluntary works better or mandatory compliant related reporting works better. But I guess what I took away was this is a journey. Perhaps you start with voluntary reporting, and depending on the maturity of the context that the organization, the company is working in, you progress along with engagement with the relevant policymakers as to what level of stringency in policy requirements would actually catalyze greater participation. On the engagement within the companies, thank you so much for your responses, that this is everybody's business. You can't homeroom it in one department in HR or say this is the responsibility of the board. Wherever the company's operations are, this is actually everybody's business. So thank you so much, and let me hand over to Sharon. Thank you so much for this engaging discussion and for your presentations.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Tarun, Anna, and Valentina, for that. Just to remind everyone, we have a very clear ambition and goal to reach and impact employees and workers all over the globe. You can see here our targets by 2025 and 10 million by 2030. So all of your action, and Anna, all of the practical examples you shared today is laddering up to that global ambition and goal. So a huge thank you to everyone who's using our tools and resources, and we'll continue to advocate across with all of our stakeholders on all of the great work that is happening. If you're interested in finding out more, don't hesitate to reach out to the Workforce Nutrition Alliance with a huge amount of tools and resources and best practices that we'd be happy to share with all of you. So thank you everyone for joining today. Again, thank you to our expert panel, and please do get in touch for any follow-up questions. Thank you very much.